You have that same terrified look on your face.
No.
Terrified look.
Nick looks terrified. I'm not sure why.
I'm just like, how bad is the interview? I didn't know that.
Hey, Jane, is this in addition to the agenda?
I just realized what's wrong. I'm having to look at it. Even Elizabeth's like, what's wrong with your face? What do you mean? What's wrong with your face? That line that goes down the middle. It's only been one day. Jeez. Man, tough room. Oh, that's Mark the same call. Sheets app loaded up.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Thursday, happy November, and I hope everyone survived comfortably Halloween. Exciting time downtown for those of you who didn't come and see the masses trick-or-treating. Before we start the meeting, I invite anybody who would like to speak to council this evening to please sign in over here. With that, I would like to call to order the Thursday, November 2nd edition of the Lexington City Council. Our second item on the agenda, if you all will please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. You all received your agenda, and I'm not aware of any modifications or changes. It's the city manager, council members. Unless there's an objection, we will approve it as presented. It is approved as it stands. First item would be presentations, fiscal year 2024 first quarter financial report. And I'll call on the city manager to call on Jen. Come on down, Jen. We'll have fun tonight.
Excellent. Everyone's a little punchy.
Yes.
So good evening, and I'm here tonight to share with you the financial results for the first quarter of 2024, fiscal year 24. The city's first quarter financials reflect revenues and expenses that are generally in line with expectations. Sales, meals, lodging taxes, and interest earnings remain strong. The first half of our property taxes are due December 5th. So no alarm that we've only collected 1% on that line. I expect by the end of the second quarter, we'll be at about 50%. You'll also notice that our permits and licenses are nearing our budgeted amount already, and W&L is doing many projects this year. So we'll actually end up exceeding budget as of the end of October, actually, if I'm remembering correctly. Expenses are also in line with expectations. Many of our expenses occur unevenly throughout the year, particularly within debt service and several of the smaller agency contributions that are paid in the first quarter of each year. And I'd like to pause. Oh, go ahead.
Can I just ask you a quick question about the non-departmental I guess expenses? Is that any cause for concern that it's?
No, within the non-departmental, that's where our debt service payments are made. And I think it's close to 73% of our debt service payments for the year, we actually pay in the first quarter.
Okay,
So that'll even out throughout the year.
thanks.
Sure. Any other questions here on the general funds revenues or expenses? Last week, oh,
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
Yes, sir.
I just want to go back. And if you address this and I missed it, my apologies. The cinnamon got the back of my throat. obviously it was, I think in June that the Southern Inn restaurant closed and has had a couple of functions, but for the most part is not, have we seen any impact to meals?
Our meals taxes are surpassing budget. And I want to double check so I don't lie to you, but I believe we're surpassing last fiscal year at this point in time as well.
So, and I can't help but think it may be a function of inflation and bigger ticket, even though there may not be more, but
Right.
I'm glad to know that we're not seeing the negative impact financially for us
Hopefully that continues.
of the Southern Inn closing.
I think they're down a little bit from last year.
Were they down a little
Just
bit?
a little
Okay,
bit.
thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Proceed.
All right. Last week, we had a very informative meeting with the school board, so I won't duplicate their information, but I would like to just point out that we're tracking closely to budget in both revenues and expenses. And as part of the budget amendments I bring forward at the next meeting, the schools will be asking for some additional appropriations. However, they're not asking the city for additional funding. They'll be looking to appropriate additional funding they're receiving from the state.
Just a quick question. What was the large increase in revenue? I mean, it was like $8,000, but it was way exceeding. It's like way exceeding the budget. Is like let's see here, miscellaneous on school revenue fund.
Let me just pull that out for. Oops, sorry. And if it's in our catch-all miscellaneous category, I may need to go back to the schools and just ask them. But let me just pull that up quickly. I apologize. I don't know offhand, but I'll make note and get back to you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay.
Jen, I understand the piece that the school's going to be asking for some funding, but it's the all-in state funding.
It is.
Remind me what all-in, what that funding is about.
That was to help with attendance issues.
Okay.
And I think there were 3 particular items that they said it could be used for, but all kind of related to
Okay.
minimizing that.
Is that part of the governor's initiative?
Well, it is part of the governor's initiative, but I believe 10% of that is going toward attendance initiatives. The rest of it, I thought, was going to more focused tutoring and some other
Okay.
instructional
right.
help. But I think they may have said it was even $14,000, so a little bit less than 10%,
Right.
would be used to educate the public on the importance of attendance.
Mhm. And I'll double check my notes and I'll send that around tomorrow morning as well.
Just needed that reminder. I
Understood.
remember we talked about it, covered a lot.
For this slide here on the utility fund, I was able to include the October revenues, which are largely for September uses. And I was pleased to see that we are tracking our revenue budget so far. It's only 1 quarter down, but it was good news to see that. And again, as I mentioned in my report to you, the expenses look high, but again, the capital projects expenses are largely paid for by bond funds. So the operating expenses are in line. In the equipment replacement fund, we have ordered and received nearly everything except for some of our long lead time items. And then one update from the report that was circulated in your packets, the sale of the ladder truck ended up falling through. So we're going to go back out and try to sell that again. Before I move on to talking about the surplus, any questions about the revenues, expenses for any of the funds?
Jen, this may be included in your surplus piece, but the appropriation to the equipment replacement of 41,738 for the uplift or upfit on the 2 SUVs.
Those were budgeted for in FY 22, and we actually didn't accept delivery until the last day of FY 23.
Mhm.
And just because of the delays and lag times and increase in prices, the cost of those went up from what was initially budgeted.
So this isn't an additional 41,000, is it?
So we have about 12,000 remaining in what was originally budgeted. So when I bring the request to you formally next or in 2 weeks, it should be closer to just under 30,000, but it is in addition to what was budgeted previously.
Okay. Just that much more expensive to upfit these
Both
new
the
SUVs.
upfitting and the cost of the SUVs themselves.
Ah, okay. Thank you.
Okay, so the unaudited surplus for FY 23 is just over 4.3 million. And once we factor in department carryover requests, that brings us to almost 4.1 million of surplus. And you'll see over on the right-hand side that the city manager and I are recommending that we contribute $1.9 million to the utility fund for upcoming projects, $1 million to the newly created capital reserve fund to help with debt service in the future, and then 20,000 to the treasurer's office for assistance in completing a banking services RFP, and then the upfits that the mayor had just mentioned. And you'll notice that $1,914,434 is a pretty exact number. Where I derived that number is looking at the ARPA revenue we were able to recognize in FY 23, backing out the expenses that we used those freed up funds to cover in FY 23, the 2.3 million to capital projects for bridge repairs and 500,000 for the master metering project at WNL leaves us with that 1.9 million we're recommending be used for the utility fund. Okay, next, this is a breakdown of the departmental requests for the carryovers. And I know you've all had a long day, and I will be bringing this in front of you formally in 2 weeks. So I don't want to, drag anybody down or go through it too much. But if anybody has any questions or thoughts on any of these figures, I'm happy to. The school board has requested that they be allowed to carry over their surplus from FY 23, which was just over $167,000. And at our meeting last week, Aaron did outline for us where they would like the funds to be allocated. So here I'm just repeating that information for you. We have several carryover requests in the other funds as well. Nearly all of these are due to projects that are continuing into this fiscal year. And then we also have the trash truck, which was ordered in FY 23, but we won't accept delivery until January of 24.
It's kind of, we plan to accept it then, because it hasn't been delayed.
It's like the ladder truck. It's been delayed and delayed and delayed. So the latest date is January.
Terrific. Thank you.
Jen, do we have a locked-in price on that? Like, we're not going to run into the SUV.
Correct. We have a locked-in price
Okay.
on that. Okay, and so I have received the draft audit at this point, which is showing that at the end of FY 23, the general funds balance is $20.8 million. So on this slide, I wanted to show you how that is broken down, especially as it relates to the proposed changes in our fund balance policy and the creation of the capital reserve fund. For comparison purposes, I've also included FY 22 and what that would have looked like if we had adopted the updated fund balance policy last year. So you'll see that we still have 3.3 million in excess unassigned, although our required unassigned has jumped up to just over $9 million. And then we have the 4.6 million in the capital reserve fund, to use for future debt service payments for some of the big projects we have coming down the way. Lastly, I just wanted to share with you our preliminary ending fund balances for the other funds. So as we said just a moment ago, the general fund is 20.8 million. And the general fund for audit purposes, it's comprised of the equipment replacement fund and the general fund itself. But that 20 million does not include 6.3 million in capital projects, the 2 million for the schools, et cetera.
Jen, looking at the cemetery trust fund, is that the current balance in that, or is that?
At the end of FY23, all in the cemetery. Yes, that is.
Okay.
So that's the two funds, right? I mean, there are two main funds and that's the total of both of them.
Thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Glancing at the IDA, those funds are a result of fees that we charge bond issuers, predominantly Kendall and
Exactly,
Washington Lee.
WNL and VMI. And I think that started in 2019.
Correct. So,
The formula for charging them changed in 2019. We'd always been charging them, but we changed the money that comes to us that will come each year as opposed to one time when they do the issuance, but we changed it so that it would be ongoing, a revenue stream that we.
An annual fee.
How hard would it be to separate out like the tourism fund for the regional tourism?
Oh, that's not hard at all. I'd be happy to send that around tomorrow morning as well.
Okay.
I'll show you all three: tourism, RARO, and dispatch.
Are they generally held in they're held in the general fund or
They're actually down in the custodial funds.
custodial funds?
Mhm.
Okay. But they're all jointly held in the custodial funds, all the
Well,
their fiscal agents for. Does that make sense?
ask me again.
So
let me see
Yeah.
if I can connect the dots. They all have their individual fund
right.
where they're accounted for.
Mhm.
But on this line item, custodial
They're put
funds.
together as custodial
Correct.
funds. Okay.
Right. I wrestled with myself to split out all three or just lump them together, and I made the wrong choice.
Not at all.
I know that there was a request that the finance directors from the three localities meet to discuss tourism funds.
Oh, okay. I
At
didn't
some
get that
point.
memo.
Yeah. I brought it up under my tourism report a few weeks ago or a couple months ago, actually.
I apologize that I missed that.
What aspect of discussion?
I think it was just how the funds are invested and or generating interest, and how they will be in the future.
We have reported back that the funds that we're fiscal agent for will have any interest that they create, put in those funds,
Okay.
which is what the county does at this time.
Okay. And then just have you communicated that to the Rockbridge County Administrator and the Buena Vista?
I know we went to the county administrator, but I don't think BV is fiscal agent, so I'm not sure I passed anything.
Fair
on-
enough. Fair enough. I
passed
just
anything on to
wanted to
them.
make sure because I had got a recurring question about that. So I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page.
To confirm, your point is that Lexington is the fiscal agent for Rockbridge Regional Tourism,
Yes, sir.
and any funds that are held we're custodian for, and any earnings on that interest earnings on that fund stay within that fund.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Right. And we did begin that with this fiscal year.
Okay.
So I think tourism has about 200,000 that we keep in the LGIP. So they'll earn interest on that each month.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from council? Jen, thanks for counting the beans and reporting to us and for all your good work. I'll just remind council and members of the public, this was a presentation this week, this meeting. In 2 weeks, we will have for our consideration and adoption the different recommendations from city staff. So please be prepared to if you have any questions or concerns about how the funds are allocated, especially with that surplus, that we have discussion on that. Next item is consideration of minutes. We have October 19, 25, and 26. And those were all wonderfully done by our clerk. Unless there's any objection, having been circulated prior, would adopt them as presented. They are adopted. Thank you all. Next is citizens' remarks and comments. Have two folks who have signed up to speak, and I'll invite up Dave Wells first. Dave, come on up. Customarily, I give a long dissertation about making your comments directly to us and that we don't engage with you. We're just here to listen and what you have on your mind. And typically love for you to limit it to 3 minutes, but with just two of you signed up this evening, we got a little latitude, but 3 minutes is our standard. And before Dave begins, Marquita Dunn is on deck.
Thank you. I'll try to be brief and to the point. I came here last time trying to find out information on exactly what I needed to do with my garden space, and city manager came and I found out what I needed to do, and it's been done. But in the midst of all this, it was much to my chagrin that I had to do certain things, but I really think that some good positive change can come out of it. I think anything we go through in life, you can find some positive things and you can seek to make things better. And two things that I made a petition concerning, and I have 57 signatures from the time that I guess it's been about 2 weeks of signing, but I'm going to hand this to you. I won't read this whole thing. You can read it for yourself. And I've got an empty copy if you want to take it and look over it too. But two main issues that rose out of this garden debacle were, one, there seems to be a need to look hard at city codes regarding things such as permaculture, which, it's a new thing. Not really a new thing, but it's been more accepted these days. And it might be great for the city council to take a hard look at permaculture and sustainable ecosystems and city yards and common areas as well in the city. I know from conversation that it sounds like the Rockbridge Land Conservation Group might be interested in advising you. And I'm sure there's several local people who are more knowledgeable than I am, even though I grew up on a farm. I've been growing stuff all my life. My mom, even though she didn't have a PhD, she knew more about plants than anybody I know. But these people are available, and this petition is basically asking you all to look into that and potentially change some city code that are somewhat archaic, in my opinion. And also just kind of being singled out in the middle of our awesome town of Lexington, which I've grown to love. Been here approximately 12 years and love it to death. And I'm glad I'm a member of the community. And as such, maybe we could be a role model to the rest of the world. Society needs to know how to be neighborly, and in a big way. I mean, so much stuff is going on, and it's not good. But I'd like for us to be a model of that. And maybe we could look at maybe writing some city code on how to be neighborly, how to solve problems such as my garden aggravating someone. Sit down, have a conflict resolution somehow. I'm up for a good beer with anybody, anytime. If you don't drink beer, we'll have coffee. I don't drink coffee, but I'll get something there. Just something in place where it doesn't feel like you're being attacked for trying to be a part of the community, and you can work things out before it has to go to, I know the complaints have to be looked at and dealt with. There's an order, but maybe we can do something better. So that's what the petition is about. And who should I give it to?
You can give that to
Okay.
Janie.
Okay.
She's the one that collects all the good stuff.
So that's pretty much all I have to say. And I hope something good comes of this. And I'm available to help spur some change if needed.
Fantastic. Dave, thanks for being with us this evening. Next, I'd like to call on Marquita Dunn. And we've got your address in here, so thank you for being with us.
You're welcome. Hello. My name is Marquita Dunn. I live at 222 Massey Street. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but sitting there listening to Mr. Wells talk about his property, I do not know what his garden space looks like, but I do know what his front porch looks like. I travel that street several times a week, visit people on that street. And it's a disgrace to that area, and it needs to be cleaned up. It could possibly attract rodents, snakes, and other things that come along with that. So for the neighborhood, I would like to see it cleaned up. And that's just my opinion. Also, I'm here to thank you all for all the work that you all have done on 201 North Randolph Street. We saw some equipment there today and some action, so I thank you for that. And then there's another one on Fuller Street that we need to discuss at a later date. So thank you.
Marquita, thanks for being with us, and encourage you to, along the lines of discussions, to seek out the city manager, or he'll be in touch with you to find out the concerns on Fuller Street. But can't help but think tonight is a great first step in neighbors meeting one another and talking about expectations and how to get along and live well together. So thank you all for those comments. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to council this evening? Not seeing anyone that would like to speak, I'll close the citizen remarks and comments and go into unfinished business and call on city manager regarding the adoption of amended financial policies.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will also try and be brief. You've seen these policies several times. I think they've been well explained and in some detail by both the folks from Davenport who we've been working with, and finance director and myself. So we have them available for you here to consider for adoption tonight. These are policies, of course. They can be changed should you adopt them at any time in the future by City Council. I believe that they are conservative policies for a reason. We are in very strong financial condition right now. We do have a lot of potential projects that we will be participating in, and there will be some significant debt issued in the near future, if you consider 10 years near future, but we want to plan for a good financial management out to a fairly long horizon, if you will, maybe 10 to 15 years. So that's what these policies are trying to accomplish. And again, I would recommend that City Council consider them very carefully and adopt these policies. I think they accomplish much of what you would like to see accomplished, and our community would like to see accomplished as we manage our financial resources today and in the future. Happy to take any questions.
One point of clarification, will you want us to adopt both policies separately?
If you'd like, one motion or two motions is fine.
I'm just clarifying. And then thank you both for meeting with me yesterday. That was, I think, for a while to talk about this and answer my questions. One point of clarification. I mean, I think I do understand this, but I should never assume that. The whole concept of the basically the required unassigned, where that will creep up to potentially $9 million, in excess of $9 million. And that those are funds that sit there that we do not spend, but they make us look good to lenders, private lenders. do those dollars help us if we do not go with a private lender? If we receive a credit rating and we decide, boy, we went to the market, a private lender didn't give us the rate that we wanted, and instead we're going to go to the pooled financing through the Virginia Resource Authority. Could at that time we say, gosh, that $9 million that's just wanting to make us look good to a private lender, that now we're not dealing with a private lender, could we reassign some of those $9 million?
Yes, of course. You have a policy before you. You can adopt the policy and you can amend the policy at any time to have different results. I would say, however, when you indicate they don't do us any good,
Well,
we do collect interest and we're doing very well with our interest earnings today. Putting this aside, 40% for this particular purpose really doesn't differ much from the $15 million we've had over the last several years that we didn't spend for anything. Without saying it, we were holding that, if you will, for future needs and for a rainy day fund. Now we've just explicitly said, let's consider a 40% of our fund balance for a rainy day fund, if you will.
completely. I appreciate that explanation. I understand. I think part of the mindset that I had as we were accumulating the significant unassigned fund balance was that we might decide to pay cash for certain projects, especially as we look at interest rates that are much higher. And it might, if we were sitting on cash that, yes, in FY24 is earning, let's say 5%, but when we go to the market to borrow money over 2 decades, 20 years, 30 years, 3 decades, if the interest rate we might receive is 6% for 30 years, to me, it starts to say, gosh, yeah, we're earning a little bit of interest, but let me take a few million and lower those interest payments for the next 30 years at 6%. And so that's just, but you've answered my question. It makes good sense right now to do what we're doing. Totally agree. We appreciate the guidance, but we retain the flexibility if the path that we're going down to get a credit rating, private lender, if that doesn't work out, the citizens, that's the citizens' dollars, and that we can spend those money, right?
You're stewards of
Okay.
those funds. So yes, that decision can be changed or amended, and you can take fewer of those dollars, put them in a reserve fund and take the rest for debt service or for projects around the community, just as you can today.
All right. Thank you. I mean, I appreciate you letting me ask the question.
I would just pile on and say it's not an irrevocable circumstance, and future councils may thank you for the prudence if we see 10, 15% interest rates that you're too young to remember in the 1980s. Spending that money makes a great deal of sense, and having it almost as a rainy day fund of sorts. But the benefit that it'll provide us over the short term, in my opinion, from a professional opinion, the benefit it will give us for a stronger credit rating to get a lower general rate, whether it's a private or the open market for municipal bonds, is going to serve us well. They're having that savings and commitment to fiscal responsibility that we're doing. We're just documenting. We have a long history and lots of certificates on the wall of our finance office of doing just this. This is just documenting it for current circumstances. But if in a couple of years, City Council wants to put in a really incredible dog park and spend $9 million, just kidding. That latitude, it is revocable, and we can change as the needs of our community change in the future. But this gives us a good, solid footing.
When to expand our sidewalks.
Maybe expand our sidewalks. Exactly. Exactly.
I appreciate, I'm sorry, Nick, where you going?
Yeah, I had one word in the debt policy that I would like to see a little firmer. And it's under type of debt permitted.
What page are you on?
I'm on page 1 of 3 on the debt policy. I would like to see something firmer than extenuating circumstances, maybe either extreme or emergency circumstances in regards to the discussion about when variable rate debt can exceed more than 20% of the city's outstanding indebtedness. And I know it's, a small change verbally, but I want to put something in this language that, emphasizes that we really shouldn't be going over 20% of the city's outstanding indebtedness and variable rate debt, because it's going to make it harder to budget in the future if you have a large percentage of variable rate debt. So just maybe to change extenuating to extreme circumstances or something like that, just to kind of put a little exclamation point on that we really shouldn't be going over 20% of variable rate debt.
I guess I'm trying to understand what the difference between extenuating and
It's like I would almost say emergency, because what you have the option of doing is waiting until some of the variable rate debt is either refinanced to fixed rate debt, or you have the option of waiting until that debt is paid off before you take on more variable rate debt. And from a budgetary purpose, I'm suggesting a slightly firmer word.
okay.
I agree with the sentiment. I don't really personally see that we need to change it, but
No.
I agree with the sentiment, but we just never have had an issue with that before. We've
And
always
are
been
you-
very conservative.
And you could argue that the sentiment is implied.
Yeah.
A stronger word doesn't make the sentiment, could make the sentiment stronger, but it's the sentiment, not.
You're going to be the determining the decision maker as to whether it's extenuating or an emergency
Right.
circumstance, since you're going to be the body who's going to have to issue the debt to begin with. So
Right.
make that decision.
I'd like to see a change, but it's just a suggestion. I mean, I'm fine with the policy overall.
I appreciate the change to the school board policy. I think it follows what we've been practicing in everybody's perception of the policy. And with that, I'll go ahead and move to approve the amended fund balance policy and the amended debt policy as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, a roll call vote. Mr. Betts?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler?
Aye.
Ms. Strong?
Aye.
Mr. Alligood? Ms. Alexander?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all for the time and work involved in putting this together. Yes, sir.
Of course, Mr. Mayor and Council Member, the second action is to look at the reimbursement resolution that has been provided for you this evening. That is so we can proceed to issue bonds for the Department of Social Services facility that we will be funding jointly with the city of Buena Vista and Rockbridge County. We are the fiscal agents, and we want to assure ourselves, of course, that before the bonds are issued, any of the expenses that we will be paying can be recovered in that bond issuance. So that is what this resolution accomplishes. Of course, we will be paying engineering and design fees, architectural fees prior to construction and probably prior to borrowing. So obviously, it's always good policy to get that reimbursement resolution in place. And so that's what is before you. I recommend you approve. Also ask that we be allowed to pursue the credit rating, that at least a head nod on that. We don't need a motion, but a head nod so we can go ahead and get that credit rating in place. So when we do issue bonds, we can go to the market and show that, yes, we've been very diligent in pursuing good financial policies.
I make a motion that we approve resolution 2023-10.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote. Mr. Alligood?
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler?
Aye.
Mr. Betts?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Ms. Strong?
Aye.
Ms. Alexander?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously, and I vote aye. Thank you all. And is there any objection to moving forward? Did I leave you out, Chuck?
No.
Oh,
Did you say I vote aye?
yes. It's on the resolution.
Okay.
It is different.
Gotcha.
Would ask if there's any objection to pursuing the credit rating the city manager requested. All right. Seeing the appropriate nods, give you that direction as well. Next item on the agenda is update on 201 North Randolph.
I think we heard our update earlier from Ms. Dunn. There is equipment out at that site, or there was earlier today. They're proceeding with some of the very preliminary work, putting up a silt fence, removing the existing security fence, shutting off the utilities. And next week, I don't know about tomorrow, but I know next week they will be hitting it full force. And if you noticed the house just across the street there that they also took down last week, in a matter of 3 days, that house was gone. I can't tell you the address right off the top of my head, but the Leslie Construction Company were there right on the corner of
Corner
on Diamond.
Tucker and Massey.
Massey, that's correct. Thank you. And apparently that was a house that was not in good shape, and there was a permit in place, and they took it down and they moved right across the street. So we'll see action, I'm sure, at 201 in very near future.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of the city manager? Hearing none. Reports and communications. Blue Ridge Resource Authority.
No
Mr.
report.
Smith. Main Street Lexington, Mr. Smith.
No report.
Planning Commission, Ms. Strawn.
Sure. Planning Commission met last Thursday on October 26th, and we brought back a certificate of appropriateness in the entrance corridor for Lewis Gale on East Nelson Street. A monument sign had been proposed. Planning Commission asked for the designer to go back and make some modifications to it. If you'll notice on Nelson Street, nearly all the monument style signs have a base material that is the same as the building material. And apparently our former director of planning, Bill Blotter, had worked with business owners and had a grant through the city to help modify all those signs so that they did have a base to each of the monument signs. So Gia Delgado came back with a modified sign for Lewis Gale that incorporated a brick base, and we approved that. So just very interesting. We're talking about adding that into our entrance corridor requirements, making it does right now say it should blend with the style of the building, but we're talking about making it more specific for if you're in the entrance corridor that it needs to incorporate the building materials, just so there's no questions about it. No, it sets everybody's expectation. And then we discussed our calendar of events for the coming year, what ordinances we want to update and which new ones we want to tackle. And that's all I have, unless there's any questions.
Thank you, Leslie. Any questions? Hearing none. Mr. Betts, Regional Tourism update.
No report.
Any comments on the interviewing process or search for a new director?
I hope to have some comments at our next meeting.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Raro, Mr. Ziegler.
The RARO Board of Directors met yesterday. I will be brief. We did receive a report from our programs committee, and they talked about the growing popularity of flag football for adults. Of course, flag football will eventually be a Olympic sport in the near future. It will be. And Erin Terrapane, who's one of our new rep from the city, she talked about how when she lived in Northern Virginia, there were co-ed leagues. It was huge. And so we would like to potentially explore offering that initially as, pick up flag football before we tried to launch anything. But we continue to try to think of new activities, programs that might attract different ages of participants. So that's something exciting that our staff is always willing to explore new programs, and we might be doing in the near future. We also received a little bit of information, and we wanted to publicly thank the good work of Lexington City Public Works and also Dominion Power. Specifically, there were a couple of points of contact with Dominion Power, a gentleman named Bob Stennett and a gentleman named Dan Fessler. We had identified that two of the light poles at Fox Field were in much disrepair. They're wood poles, and they were replaced very quickly, very efficiently. Again, Public Works and Dominion we couldn't have done it. I mean, that was huge. Those are about, I think they might be 65-foot poles, or that at least 65 feet is the extent of what Dominion will work on. We do, when we look at Brubaker, the football field there, those are a little bit taller. Those are beyond Dominion's capabilities and require more equipment. They might be about 90 feet. But we're exploring if we need to check on those poles. We want to make sure that they're safe and everything. So if you happen to be by Brubaker Complex, you will see that 2 of the wood poles on Fox Field are new. So that's something that's something that I just wanted to share. And then since this is kind of an annual update, we re-elected Joey Jones as our chairperson. And I think for the 8th year in a row, you're looking at the vice chair. So, I mean, I don't know. So I can't get over that hump. I say that every year. I can't make it to the chair. But Joey Jones is dedicated to our organization and our community and to youth sports. And he does a heck of a job as the chairman. And we appreciate his service. So I just wanted to update you on that.
How many people would you need for a flag football team?
It's a great question. I think it's typically 7 on 7.
Oh, so we can have council.
That's true. That's true. We could be a team. That's our goal, to put that out there and to see if that's a possibility. And
For council to have a team?
Well, no, but that. So initially our thought, that's a great question, actually. Initially our thought, we actually do a little bit of flag football for our youth as we enter them into tackle at the youngest ages. But what we're thinking about right now is an adult offering pickup of flag football. And currently adults age 18 and up is what we have for that. Again, we're talking about it, and typically our staff is amazing. And when we talk about it and we try to get a good idea, they try it, they launch it. So that's something that our folks are looking at. So just wanted to update you on that.
Concerned you got new field at Brubaker Field in the annex. Then we moved the batting cage and we got a new building. Now we've got new light poles. It's like we're inching around. It's like when you have a renovation in your home, it starts with one thing and creeps around. So thank you for the update, and thank you. Please deliver thanks from all of council to Dominion in particular and Public Works for that work to light up Fox Field.
I will.
Threshold, Ms. Alexander.
Threshold met on Wednesday, the 25th. We did not have a quorum. We were missing 3 people. So we basically had a discussion, and it started out talking about the windshield housing assessment and an update on that. And at that time, of course, it had been submitted, but we didn't have any updates. We now have an update, and it has been approved. So we will continue to move forward with that. Next, we talked about homelessness in this community. It was reported that RA's program to provide local emergency housing for unhoused individuals has run into some difficulties. Historically, RA has provided vouchers for emergency overnight stays at partnering local hotels, but the hotels have begun refusing to accept the vouchers due to some issues that they have had with some of the past individuals using them. So there's a hope that Threshold will continue to lead a discussion about homelessness in this area and finding solutions and some assistance with that. It was reported that the housing study, the preliminary part of the housing study, indicated that there's an estimate of 644 people in the Lexington, Buena Vista, Rockbridge area who are either homeless or at a risk of being homeless. And that is strictly an estimate because we could not get exact figures on that. It was also suggested that we research the business model that the Valley Mission has in Stanton, which is a homeless shelter, as well as a Waynesboro location that opens up during the winter for people to stay warm overnight. There is a lack of available permanent housing for people awarded rental assistance vouchers locally. talked about the possibility of local churches playing a role and the liability that's associated with transient housing. There was mention of a Seattle program that designates specific parking areas and parking lots for people living out of their cars. Additional discussion had to do with the repair work that we were doing in some of the neighborhoods a few years ago before the pandemic. And we're going to go back to that list because we think there's one house that did not get completely repaired because of the pandemic. The city planner reported that there was a demolition permit issued for 201 North Randolph, and we just talked about that here. And we're going to talk more about the regional housing study at our next meeting. And there's going to be a meeting after Thanksgiving rather than the normal schedule that we have before Thanksgiving. And that's all I have. Any questions?
I will ask a question. On when you were looking at shelter for homelessness, and did you discuss there actually is openings at the shelters in Stanton now, but and having dealt with some of our homeless people personally, they don't want to go to shelters. So before you go too far down that rabbit hole, and Rah has all the information on it, they do offer transportation, but for various reasons, a lot of people won't take up the offer of going to a shelter. There's rules, and that's a deterrent.
I've often heard that the main one is that when you go and you have your belongings with you, you take them to the room, and then you have to leave that room in the morning and take all of your belongings with you. So you do that transition, every night and every morning. And that's one of the things. I don't know what some of the other things are, but there are definitely some rules that people have to go by living in situations like that. So yeah, thank you. We'll keep that in mind.
Thank you, Ms. Alexander. Maury Service Authority, Mr. Alligood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Maury Service Authority Board met on October 24th, and the news is several pieces here. On December 5th, we're anticipating a joint meeting with the MSA board and the localities to hear from the engineering consultants to review the findings of the MSA wastewater facilities engineering reports. And so this will be the first public opportunity to start hearing how the money is estimated, or the levels of estimates, and for which particular projects. And the site of the meeting hasn't been set yet. The last one we had was held at the Horse Center, and so location to be announced, but December 5th is a date that's firmed up. On another matter, the MSA received $350,000 in principal forgiveness to include MSA, to compare MSA options for handling solid waste, whether to convert it into it's called a cake solids, or not. Right now, solid waste is being field applied. There's a agricultural application system similar to what dairy farms use to spread manure on the fields. MSA is using the same type system now. And we're going to be in part use of that 350,000. We're going to sample and test emerging contaminants, including PFAS, which is getting a lot of publicity these days, and MSA is trying to stay ahead of it in terms of what our responsibilities, and we're going to identify just what levels we're actually talking about. And that's the end of the report.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Alligood?
Do we
Nick.
have a reading on our PFAS levels currently, or is
Several years ago, there was a test, there was a test made and the levels were low enough as to not be detected in the particular test, but this is going to be more tests.
Okay.
And so right now, the levels aren't high, but it doesn't mean they're zero.
thank you.
I recall
And we're going to know what they are after this money is spent and the testing is done. So that's moving ahead.
and locally, I think RAC in particular has been spearheading educational pieces since the pandemic. I remember the city manager and I both dialed into a presentation on PFAS and the widespread issue related to that, where some communities have been harder hit with contamination and disease and illnesses. So
To follow up on that, one of the issues that appears to be developing regarding PFAS is let's assume that you somehow are able to filter the various PFAS compounds out. The handling of that filtrate it's anticipated now will be treated as hazardous waste. And there are specific hazardous waste regulations that are in play should that occur. There are no hazardous waste disposal sites nearby. And so there's a whole new set of problems that will occur with regard to that might occur with regard to the PFAS. So it's in development right now, but it's certainly being looked at closely.
thank you, sir. The next item on the agenda is my report, and in no particular order, I have a couple of items. Number one, want to thank the members of the public that have worked with Main Street Lexington over the past week or so, looking at Courthouse Square and, if you will, the fluffing and buffing of that space and making it more functional and beneficial to the community. If you have been looking for a reason to go to the Horse Center and need some inspiration, this weekend's horse show, one of the organizers contacted me, and they are in need of volunteers. There's some dressage, and don't know enough about all of the eventing, but they will happily feed you breakfast, put you to work, and make it a beautiful day at the Horse Center. So if you needed some inspiration or looking for something to do this weekend, volunteering at the Horse Center, and you can just contact the Horse Center directly to let them know that you'll be coming and attending. Last week, attended the Rockbridge Community Health Foundation's annual meeting, which was at Brubaker Field in the timber frame facility. Chad Coffey did a great job of welcoming everyone as the RARO director and one of the beneficiaries of the grant, which made it possible for them to erect that timber frame structure. Fantastic meeting, beautiful day, beautiful structure, and it's just neat to see the neat things that happen in our community when like-minded neighbors come together and work together on positive outcomes. An extension of Mr. Wells' comments earlier, neighbors working together and working for solutions is a much better way. You've heard me advocate that for several years now. And I stand by that and encourage neighbors, if you see something, report it, talk to your neighbors and see why things are the way they are and how we can have better outcomes. And lastly, if you haven't noticed, the leaves are falling, and remind people the schedule that we have of pickup. So get your leaves to the curb so they can be collected. And with that, I'll bounce pass it to the city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got an extensive list of items this evening, so my apologies for delaying the end of this meeting. A little more information on the DSS facility. The agreement with Thompson and Litton for the engineering design of the facility has been written and will be reviewed by the city attorney, of course, before it is signed. Terms of the agreement have been extensively reviewed by the county administrator, city manager of Buena Vista, and myself, and the cost of the facility is estimated to be $9,435,300. So that's the estimate at this point. Recompete grant, you may recall there was discussion of a regional grant that actually has now been submitted that came from Buena Vista, Rockbridge County, and Lexington. And that's through the Economic Development Authority to create a strategic development plan to support and expand economic development in our area. This grant has no local match, and it is in the amount of $250,000. There were 168 grants submitted nationwide for this program, and it's anticipated that only 30 will be awarded. So our odds are a little less than 20%, but we may be on that list. Taking up on Councilmember Alexander's report, the survey of the windshield survey grant is up to $50,000. Again, no local match. And the purpose of that is to just survey the general conditions of housing throughout the city. All housing units will be surveyed. And the grant agreement has to still be negotiated with the VDH, Virginia Department of Housing. And once it's negotiated, we'll hire a firm that specializes in this. They'll do the survey, and the results then will be looked at as far as what kind of improvements we can make through various funding sources to existing residential units in the city. We also were just informed that we received a $16,551.93 grant from the DEQ for litter prevention and recycling activities. Planning and development updates. We're still doing very, very well in that area this year. The economy doesn't seem to have impacted the results of development and building here in the community. At this time last year, we had seen 47 development activities such as CUPs, certificates of appropriateness, rezonings, lot splits, etc. This year we've seen 50, so we're up slightly. Permit fees, as noted by the finance director, have come in at $476,563 to date this year. Last year we had $128,533 in permit fees. Value and improvements are $18,153,179 in calendar year 22. Calendar year 23, we're at $58,955,306. So again, we're doing very, very well in our development, redevelopment, and growth here in the city. As an item of information, we know that we've purchased the property over at the cemetery, Evergreen Cemetery, the John Knox property. We are having the house appraised now, so that can potentially be sold, and we'll bring that before you as an item to consider. And we'll see what city council would like to do at that point. But you know, that's real estate that we have not earning any interest or not doing any purpose at this point. So I strongly recommend that when that time comes, you consider it very carefully. A few updates from the police department. Corporal Stogdale completed radar instructor school. Our newest officer, Harley Curie, who was fully certified, was recently sworn in, is on the job. Chief Green participated in an on-camera interview with Washington Toledo media students discussing body-worn camera and police procedures in the event of a bomb threat. And unfortunately, perhaps the former item was a bit of a foreshadowing, as we all know that yesterday we did have a bomb threat at the WNL campus. Numerous law enforcement agencies and units responded. The university had a shelter-in-place order, and after several hours of looking, searching for bombs on the campus, there were none found, luckily. So there was no harm, if you will, other than people were delayed, and people obviously there were upset as well throughout the community, I'm sure. Unfortunately, earlier in the afternoon, there was also a report of shots fired on East Washington Street in the area of the fraternities in that area. And again, at that point in time, our regional law enforcement units working as a team came out to investigate based on the protocols that are in place today. They were ready for action, if you will. Luckily, we found again that there was no threat. It was probably some of our fraternity men using firecrackers and making a little noise. No harm was done. But I think both of these incidents indicate the true demonstration of professionalism and cooperation, collaboration that exists between all of our local law enforcement agencies, and that we're well served by these resources as a community. Officers of the department held our monthly community walk on Cincinnati Lane. Officers were fully engaged this week in the community trick or treat, of course, events downtown and throughout the city. Chief Green attended the International Association of Chiefs of Police Conference, and a drug take back event was held this week by the department. In the fire department, last week staff responded to an accident that occurred at Morningside and Lewis when a young bike rider ran into a car. The car did not run into the rider. It was the reverse. Engine 9, which is a pumper truck, was towed to Roanoke for replacement of the turbocharger for the diesel engine. The repairs are estimated to cost $6,200 and should be finished within a week. Staff provided a standby or assisted with the recent VMI football game, downtown trick or treat, and the Washington Elite threat incident last night. Chief Dickerson is celebrating 14 years as the chief of our fire department. Dr. Kelly Armstrong from Carilion Hospital is completing an EMS fellowship and will train with the local EMS providers as part of her fellowship. Rockbridge Fire and EMS Chief Nathan Ramsey and Chief Dickerson met with Dr. Armstrong to agree to the details of this training, and both chiefs are excited to have their staff learn with a practicing EMS physician. Public Works has a number of things ongoing. The approval of the paving contract for South Main and Link Road just occurred. That is, VDOT approved of that contract, and that work should begin within the next 2 weeks. A separate paving agreement is being pursued for limited paving in Jordan's Point Park. This would include portions of the trail meeting ADA standards that's going through the park down towards the end where Woods Creek enters the Moray River. There's a area right there that a trail will extend to that will be paved so that people with disabilities can easily use that trail. A separate, there was also be ADA parking included in that paving near that trailhead and near where the river is and seating is, and new picnic area will be. So that will also provide access to those facilities and closer access to the river for individuals who may need that. And this will also include paving where the lot is for the pavilions, the bathroom, and the Gold Star Memorial. So that will be paved as well. Exploratory work will be occurring on Diamond Street as preparations are made for anticipated stormwater work in FY25. And you may notice excavations or potholes in the road surface as locations of various underground utilities are being verified. Columbia Gas is still working on Jefferson Street. That gas main replacement there is expected to be finished within several weeks. And when that happens, full lane repaving will occur, but there will not be any extensive repairs until that point. The status of the Bateau replica. Some people in the community have noticed that the replica that was in the pavilion at Jordan's Point Park has been removed, and that pavilion has been repurposed for events and activities as was suggested in the master plan for Jordan's Point Park. Luckily, if you will, the town of Glasgow has said they'd like to have that Bateau and will accept it and display it in one of their parks. So they will be taking it off our hands in the near future, and it will stay in our community. And actually, all 4 pages are now done. Any questions?
Members of council have any questions for the city manager? Thank you, Jim. Next item on the agenda, city attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nothing much for me this evening. Continue to field questions and inquiries from Jim and staff. Happy to answer any questions you may have, but not a lot going on the last couple of weeks other than some things we're going to talk about in closed session.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Any questions for the city attorney? Hearing none. Next item is new business. I'm not aware of any. And then next is the closed meeting. And excuse me, the closed meeting, just for everyone's benefit, don't anticipate council will be taking any action after this. Any items we discussed would be at a future council meeting for consideration. So with that, Ms. Alexander, if you can read us in, please.
I move that Lexington City Council convene in closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A8 for consultation with legal counsel employed by City Council regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice.
Second.
Thank you for the second. Ms. Strawn.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Siegler.
Aye.
Mr. Betts.
Aye.
Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Mayor Friedman.
Aye.
Thank you. And I vote aye. We're now